Lieutenant Commander Scott Spiker is flying his F-117 Hornet over western Iraq. He's part of a massive strike package, over 100 aircraft, heading toward Baghdad. At precisely 2:51 a.m., Spiker and his wingmen pick off their bombs at an Iraqi air defense site. At the exact same moment, hundreds of miles away, F-117 stealth fighters are dropping bombs on downtown Baghdad. In Kuwait, Navy Tomahawk cruise missiles are slamming into command centers. The air war has begun, and in the next 60 minutes, the coalition will change warfare forever. Welcome back to Gulf War Chronicles. Today we're talking about the opening hour of the air campaign, the most precisely coordinated military operation in history up to that point. Over 1,000 aircraft from multiple countries, launching from bases in 6 different countries and aircraft carriers in the Persian Gulf, all converging on Iraq at exactly the right time. Stealth fighters nobody knew existed, cruise missiles launched from ships, Apache helicopters taking out radar sites, and live television coverage showing the World War in real time. This is the story of how the air war started. The planning for this moment had taken months. Air Force planners led by Lieutenant General Chuck Horner had identified over 700 Iraqi targets, command and control centers, air defense systems, airfields, communication nodes, Scud missile sites, chemical weapons facilities. The strategy was decapitation. Hit Iraq's leadership, blind their air defenses, destroy their command structure, all in the first hours. Make it impossible for Iraq to coordinate a defense. But first, they had to deal with Iraq's integrated air defense system. It was one of the most sophisticated in the world, built by the French and Soviets. Radar sites networked together, surface-to-air missile batteries covering every approach, thousands of anti-aircraft guns. Coalition aircraft couldn't just fly in and bomb targets, they'd be shot down in massive numbers. The air defenses had to be suppressed first. That's where Task Force Normandy came in. At 1 a.m. on January 17th, 8 Apache helicopters from the U.S. Army's 101st Airborne Division took off from a forward base in Saudi Arabia. Their mission was to fly low across the desert into Iraq and destroy 2 early warning radar sites on the border. These radar sites were the eyes of Iraq's air defense network. Kill them, and coalition aircraft could penetrate Iraqi airspace without being detected. Apache flew in total darkness, navigation lights off, using night vision and terrain-following radar to avoid detection. At 2:38 a.m., exactly the planned time, they reached their targets. The lead Apache pilot, Lieutenant Tom Drew, later described it as surreal. We could see the radar installations through our thermal sights, Iraqi soldiers walking around, completely unaware we were there. Then we opened fire. Hellfire missiles and 30mm cannon fire destroyed both radar sites in minutes. The door to Iraq was now open. With the radar sites down, the stealth attack began. F-117 Nighthawks had taken off from bases in Saudi Arabia hours earlier. These aircraft were invisible to Iraqi radar, literally. Iraq's air defense system couldn't see them. At 2:51 a.m., the first F-117 dropped its bombs on a telecommunications center in downtown Baghdad. The building erupted in flames. Iraqi air defense operators had no idea what had hit them. They couldn't see the aircraft on radar. They had nothing to shoot at. Over the next 30 minutes, F-117 struck targets across Baghdad. The Ministry of Defense, Iraqi Air Force headquarters, the Presidential Palace, command bunkers, every bomb was laser-guided, hitting within feet of the aim point. One F-117 pilot, Major Greg Feast, dropped bombs on the Iraqi Air Force headquarters while anti-aircraft fire filled the sky around him. The Iraqis were shooting blind, firing at the sound of aircraft they couldn't see. Feast calmly guided his bombs to the target and flew away untouched. Simultaneously, Tomahawk cruise missiles were hitting targets. Over 100 Tomahawks were launched from ships and submarines in the Persian Gulf and Red Sea. These missiles flew low over the desert, navigating by terrain following radar and GPS, hitting targets with incredible precision. Baghdadis saw missiles flying down streets, turning corners, then slamming into buildings. It looked like science fiction. The conventional airstrikes came next. Hundreds of aircraft, F-15s, F-16s, F-A-18s, A-6s, British Tornadoes, Saudi F-15s, all converging on Iraq from multiple directions. The coordination was incredibly complex. Different aircraft types flying at different altitudes and speeds, all needing to hit their targets within minutes of each other to overwhelm Iraqi defenses. It worked. Iraqi air defense operators were so confused and overwhelmed they barely responded. CNN correspondent Bernard Shaw was in a hotel room in Baghdad with reporters John Holloman and Peter Arnott. At 3:06 a.m. Baghdad time, about 15 minutes after the first bombs fell, Shaw went live on air. "Something is happening outside. We're getting star bursts in the black sky." He was describing anti-aircraft fire. Then the famous line, Baghdad is being bombed now. The skies over Baghdad have been illuminated." For the first time in history, the world was watching a war start live on television. The opening hour wasn't without losses. Lieutenant Commander Scott Spiker, who I mentioned at the beginning, was shot down and killed, the first coalition casualty of the war. His F-A-18 was hit by an Iraqi surface-to-air missile over western Iraq. He didn't eject or didn't survive the ejection. His fate remained uncertain for years until his remains were finally found in 2009. Two other coalition aircraft were shot down in the opening hours, a British Tornado and a Kuwaiti A-4 Skyhawk. Both crews were captured. But the overall results were extraordinary. In the first 60 minutes, coalition forces struck hundreds of targets with minimal losses. Iraq's command and control system was shattered. Their air defense network was blinded. Communication between Baghdad and field commanders was severed. Saddam Hussein was cut off from his military, and Iraqi forces had no idea what had hit them or how to respond. The psychological impact was enormous. Iraqi soldiers who'd been told their defenses were impregnable watched as coalition aircraft struck targets at will. The vaunted air defense system that was supposed to protect them had failed completely. Morale collapsed immediately in many units. Some Iraqi pilots who'd been scrambled to intercept coalition aircraft simply flew to Iran and defected rather than face American fighters. The opening hour also demonstrated the revolution in military affairs that had occurred since Vietnam. Precision-guided munitions meant one aircraft with one bomb could destroy a target that would have required dozens of aircraft and hundreds of bombs in previous wars. Stealth technology meant aircraft could penetrate defended airspace without being detected. Real-time intelligence and communications meant the entire air campaign could be coordinated to the minute. This wasn't World War II-style carpet bombing. This was surgical strikes with minimal collateral damage. General Norman Schwarzkopf held a press conference the next morning and described the opening of the air campaign. He said coalition forces had flown over 1,000 sorties in the first 24 hours and achieved complete surprise. Iraqi air defenses had been neutralized. Coalition losses were minimal. The early reports suggested the campaign was succeeding beyond expectations. Schwarzkopf's confidence was warranted. The air war had started exactly as planned. The first 60 minutes set the pattern for the entire air campaign. For the next 38 days, coalition aircraft would strike Iraqi targets around the clock. Air supremacy was established on day one and never challenged. Iraqi aircraft either stayed on the ground or fled to Iran. The few that tried to fight were shot down immediately. Coalition pilots owned the skies. The opening also revealed Iraq's weakness. Despite months to prepare, despite sophisticated Soviet and French equipment, despite claims they'd fight to the last man, Iraq's defenses crumbled under the first serious attack. The gap between Iraqi and coalition capabilities was far wider than anyone expected. What military planners feared would be a costly, difficult air campaign turned out to be almost one-sided. For the Iraqis in Baghdad that night, it must have been terrifying. The city was blacked out, power had been cut, explosions everywhere, buildings burning. No information about what was happening or how to respond. And the bombing continued night after night for weeks. The psychological pressure on Iraqi civilians and military personnel was intense. This was what modern air power could do. The opening hour also changed how wars would be fought and covered. The live CNN coverage meant millions around the world watched the war start in real time. Future conflicts would be fought knowing that cameras were everywhere, that public opinion could shift based on what people saw on television. The military had to balance operational effectiveness with how operations would appear to global audiences watching on CNN. If you remember watching those first strikes on television in '91, or if you were one of the pilots or aircrew who flew those opening missions, leave a comment below. The first hour of Desert Storm's air campaign was a watershed moment. The demonstration of American military superiority, the introduction of stealth aircraft to the public, the beginning of the CNN war. Everything that followed was shaped by those first 60 minutes. Thanks for watching Gulf War Chronicles. The opening hour of the air campaign wasn't just the start of a war, it was the unveiling of a new kind of warfare. Precision strikes instead of carpet bombing, stealth instead of overwhelming numbers, real-time coordination across a theater the size of France, and all of it broadcast live to the world. The first 60 minutes of January 17, 1991 changed how we think about war. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button. I'll see you in the next one.